Welcome to the Chief Customer Officer Human Duct Tape Show. Today, I'm so happy that my friend Robbie Kellman Baxter is with us. Hey, Robbie.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. We all really need to owe you a debt of gratitude because you are a subject matter expert on the whole economy and approach to membership customer relationships. You coined the term the membership economy for all of us and really started helping people to understand the long tail of relationship on this and moving us from transactional work to the powerful growth strategy around members and elevating members. I call it as the asset of your business. So thank you and welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So we always start the show talking about what I call the breadcrumbs, because what I think is fascinating is our body of work and our experiences, even as children, if you want to go there that far back, because what we learn is the path we've taken informs the steps along the way and what gets us to be able to be good at what we're good at. So take us as far back as you want, Robbie.
Yeah, I love this question. I love this approach. Because for me, for a long time, I felt like there were so many disparate things pulling me in different ways. And they're finally starting to kind of come together in a beautiful weaving. But I've always been a connector. I'm very social, very extroverted, love to help people, love to introduce people. That's one thing. My sister is a therapist. So I've always been, she's,
Runs
she does.
Family. Well,
yeah,
we do therapy too,
I know. We actually have such great conversations about everything because there's more overlap than I think the average person would realize. But like her, I'm really interested in the relationships and the connections and why people trust or don't trust and how you earn trust, how you violate trust. And I'm a writer. I studied poetry in college. If you ever want to talk about, early 20th century feminist poets, I'm your gal.
Gosh. So who's your favorite?
Well, I wrote my thesis on Stevie Smith, who's a British poet who did the little line drawings. Her most famous poem.
Fascinating. So recite a few lines for us.
But she was not waving, but drowning. That's like the main line, not waving, but drowning.
Okay.
No one saw her. Anyway, the poem is about how this woman is out there in the water in the ocean and people thought she was having a good time.
Oh, and she was
waving for help.
Oh my God.
She was waving for help.
Wow.
So kind of morbid.
That's uplifting.
Yeah. On that note, yeah. So this, my life now totally puts together, my MBA, my love of writing, my love of people and connection, and, my love of, being an analytical person, right? Yeah. Like, I worked in big firm consulting. I love putting all the pieces together and coming up with strategy. So
you were a practitioner first,
yes.
or tell us a little bit about that, because I think the credibility of having done the work before you started writing about the work. I mean, I'm, obviously you and I are kind of took the same path. I think it lends a lot of credibility and it allows you to get into the weeds of it and then pull it out for its simplest forms too, right? Because I always say you have to understand the complexity to be able to simplify it for people.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So first of all, I love work from journalists and I love work from academics and, really enjoy reading their content as well.
Yep.
But I think the fact that I've been in the trenches for the last 25 years, doing stuff relating to subscription business models and strategy work. So I started my career, I started my career as a strategy consultant at Booz Allen and Hamilton. I went to business school. I was in product marketing for SaaS companies. And then I've worked with, as a consultant, over 100 different organizations specifically on their subscription models or their membership structures. So talk about being kind of deep in the trenches. And, I was talking to someone, actually I was talking to my kids because they're around now.
They don't go anywhere. I know it's crazy.
No, and they're home from school and they're like around all the time. We were talking about how, I'm an expert on parenting my children. I am not an expert on parenting full stop, right?
There you go.
but on the other hand, working in one subscription company, in my opinion, does not make a subscription expert.
There you go.
It's about, and I know you've had this experience as well in the, kind of being the chief customer officer or designing that office.
You bet.
Because you start, like the first
Yeah, no, and because you've been a customer of a company doesn't mean you can talk about overall customer experience, right? Or how to do it. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's, there are certainly other approaches, but when you read my books, they are full of, all the blood and guts of, like when I first started, Netflix was really the first subscription business that I really had an aha moment. It was like, wow, this is an interesting business model worth studying. And while I was working with them as a consultant and sort of falling in love with their model, other people were really interested in it too. And I started getting all these calls from people who were like, you worked with Netflix. Can you come help us do whatever it is they're doing? And I walked into the second subscription company that I ever worked with. And I said, it was part of Intuit. So it was a pay cycle. So
another great company.
Great company, small business payroll. And they did not have a free trial. And I went in there with all the confidence in the world, having come from Netflix where they have a free trial. And I said, your problem is you don't have a free trial. And it turned out that they were right not to have a free trial. That I was looking at it as if that's my kid and my kid likes,
Great analogy.
And it was only my second, kind of consumer subscription business. And it was kind of painful, but then I started to learn you don't use free trial unless, in my case, it's either they don't understand your product, unless the biggest hurdle is they don't understand or they don't believe you about your claims about your product.
You have to earn it with some way to get them in initially, right?
Yeah, well, but only if they don't, you only want to use a free trial if they don't believe you or they don't understand, if those are your two big issues. If they're not, so in the world of payroll, for example, those are not the things that are holding small business owners back. It's often it's a hassle to move my system that I already have over. And what if it doesn't work? That's a whole different problem that free trial is not going to solve.
Well, and I think it's fascinating because people often say to me, do I need a chief customer officer? Should every company? And I'm like, the answer to that question is always, it depends. There is no one size fits all to all of this. And what's important is the years and years and years and years to be able to ask, like you can, a few clarifying questions, understand some situations around the business model, its maturity, who it's serving, to be able to start pulling away. And you probably take years off people's learning curves, right, Robbie?
Yeah, that's that's my whole intention is to make things easy for the people coming behind me.
So let's talk about the first book that then leads into the second book. Your first book, do you have it there? Good author.
Always arm's reach. Right next to, I just have to say, this is also on my desk.
Thank you. That's my mom book. Would you do that to your mother? Okay, so Membership Economy, when did that come out?
Came out in 2015.
2015, a watershed year for you. Was that your first book?
It was.
And I bet it was like being shot out of a cannon.
It was. And, I'm a very methodical, research-oriented, risk-averse person. And I thought about writing that book for 10 years. I have notes going all the way back to 2004, 2003. And I talked to a lot of authors who I knew, and one of them said to me, look, this may be a life changer for you, and it may just be a £1 business card. And you have to you don't know which one it's going to be until it comes out.
You don't know. But it changed your life. It changed a lot of people's lives. You have given people a way of framing this that never existed before.
Yeah. And when this book, when the Membership Economy came out, the reason I wrote it was because other people were not seeing what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And I was baffled and frustrated by it. And I said, okay, I'm going to put all my proof points into one place. And I'm going to say, look, this is a great model. Any organization can do it. Here's all the evidence. And here's why it's so good for you. And here's a few examples of how it's being done in lots of different flavors. So it was like, I was really okay with it being a £1 business card that just said, look, this is a thing. It could be great for you.
Yep.
If you like this idea, talk to Robbie. That was all I had aimed for. And then over the next 5 years, the rest of the world sort of woke up
Caught up.
Yeah, subscription and membership is amazing. How do I do it?
That's right. Well, and it's interesting, as you and I have gotten to know each other, we've had this parallel path in each of our areas, and I'm so glad you got shot out of that cannon because, I think the world needs this. We're all living in this COVID weirdness too, and even more importantly than ever, it's not just about a forever transaction. It's about a forever customer. It's about a forever relationship. And so in the 5 years since writing that book, you've built up a great consulting business. You're a speaker as well. What prompted you to write the new book? You can hold that new one up now, The Forever Transaction. Tell us about that one and why.
Yeah. So I didn't plan to write a second book when I wrote the first one.
We never do.
You never do, right? And
in fact, one of my friends said to me after I wrote the Chief Customer Officer book, and my first one came out in 2006, which was like 5 million years ago. She said, and when I wrote my second book called I Love You More Than My Dog, What's Up With My Titles? She said, that one will probably bomb because usually once you have a really good book, you won't. Thanks.
Not true.
Well, but you,
in your case, yeah.
Well, you're a giver though. You are fearlessly giving your whole methodology in this book. True?
I am. Yeah. And what you said about a forever customer is so important. You asked, kind of why did I write a second book when it's so hard to write a book and there's so much risk that it won't be as good as the first one. What happened is people were getting it. They're like, okay, subscription is the way to go. And they would just slap subscription onto whatever products they had lying around.
Yes, ma'am.
Without thinking about the customer. And everybody wants a forever transaction, but you need a relationship with the customer that lasts forever before you can justify that forever transaction, before you can enjoy subscription revenue.
Well, and it's interesting because it becomes a silver bullet a little bit, right? Where people think, oh, wow, membership's cool, evergreen, but you have to solve the ills of how the organization works together, right? To create this whole united approach to earning the right to that membership, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've both seen this where, the tail wags the dog, right?
Yep.
We're going to do subscription pricing. Let's just add subscription pricing and then continue as we've always done it without saying, okay, if you want to have a subscription, that means that your customer can leave at any time and then you lose their revenue.
That's right.
Which means you have to keep them engaged, which means you have to deliver on your promise every single day. It's not like, you buy a car, you roll it off the showroom floor, and then it's your problem.
That's right.
And if you never take that car out of first gear, the company doesn't care because they've got all your money. But if I'm subscribing to your car and I'm not taking it out of first gear, in other words, I'm not getting the value I'm paying for, I'm going to say, I don't want this car anymore because it doesn't work.
That's right.
So it's your responsibility to make sure I'm getting value.
So and this is so important because as you know, a lot of the folks who are watching and listening to our shows are people leading company-wide transformation and or the work to earn the right to a long-term relationship with a customer. And what we're understanding is a subscription is a wonderful bond if it's done right and if you constantly earn the right to continue that relationship. So we're going to go through your book in a minute. I want you to walk through the chapters because it really is a toolkit. You've given people fearlessly so much. And I think for CCOs out there, even if they're not thinking about a subscription model, Robbie, your tenets of how to build one are really, really important things they can grab as they're transforming the business. But one of the things that you talked about, which I pulled out, I actually wrote it, I have to read it here. It says, you can't justify a forever transaction or forever customer without a forever promise. And that rang a huge bell for me because so much of this work gets started, whether it's customer, member stuff, without really that higher level layer of why do we exist? And what's our purpose and how do we make sure the entire organization is galvanized around that. Now, I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's kind of how I translated it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely, like, we're two peas in a pod, right?
I know. You guys out there are probably sick of us already, but we're gonna start dancing.
We're taking our show on the road. It is, but it's great to talk to a kindred spirit because so many people don't connect the dots and don't see how, if you want to charge this way, which we all do, because recurring revenue, 5 to 7x multiples on your valuation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But you have to have that North Star. You have to say, what is it? What is my promise to the people I serve, to my customers, that is going to continue both to justify that transaction, but also is going to guide us as an organization and help us make our decisions. It's our lens. Exactly.
Okay. So who builds the lens and how in your kind of world? How do you get that lens built? Because it's not just about membership. It really becomes a lens for the overall experience because everything's got to move into that as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So my book is divided in 3 parts. And the first part is launch. And that's for either you're an entrepreneur that's thinking, I'm going to start my own thing and it's going to have subscription pricing, which a lot of people want to do.
Yep.
Or I'm an intrapreneur inside a large organization that's trying to move to being more customer centric and to justify recurring revenue.
Okay.
That's the team that needs to do the work to define that forever promise.
But you need to engage your leadership team with that as well. Do you agree?
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It has to be top down.
Tell us the best practices I hate that word best practices because it's starting to mean like, who knows what that means. Tell us about a couple examples. You don't have to name the companies unless you want to, of how to get that done. People love, I'm going to push on you now. This is my pushiness, the Italian pushiness. People want tactics that they can go try themselves.
Yeah. So you want it to do your forever promise. First of all, you have to know who's your best customer and who are you designing your subscription around. And you have to be laser focused. That is the first step.
And how do you get to that?
Well, if you're a going concern, so you already have data, you have to look at your data and say, who are we designing it for? And what the exercise I have companies do is best, this is like you can just do it in a room. You don't need any big data, but there's, I'm sure, more detailed ways. Best customer, not best customer. Everybody writes down who, because usually they know people or they can describe them. Who is a best customer? How do you define it? Usually it's about lifetime customer value. It's about using all your features or many of your features regularly and well. It's about maybe they go a step beyond and they actually contribute their own time and effort to making your business more successful.
They put their skin in the game.
Yeah, all of that. And then you say, who are not best customers and what attributes do they have? So you can start not your worst customers, but your not best customers.
You're kind of the
mediocre.
Men's
fine.
Call it in Italian. Men's
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to look at that and suddenly like you see the eyes pop open when they start to get it. And you say, okay, now we're going to prune the tree. All of those other not best customers, we're not optimizing our membership for. This is the group. And what's the promise? This is how I help them think about the promise is what is it when they buy your product today? What is it that they wish? What is the full problem that they have? And what is it that they would say to their friends or colleagues? I wish this company would just do the whole thing. So for example, I buy a new blouse. I need to go give a keynote speech. I have a pantsuit. I need a new blouse. I go to a store, I buy the blouse. And I'm thinking, God, I wish that they would give me the whole and the earrings. And I wish that they periodically let me know that what I have is getting a little long in the tooth and maybe I should update my suit.
Yeah.
So that is what I really want from them is to look professional on stage.
Yeah. It's not
the blouse.
About buying suits. It's looking professional. And we're so connected. It's gross, right? So I always say, find the goal and build to the goal, right? So we need to know the goal of our best customers.
Yes. And one of the risks I think that a lot of going concerns, successful companies have when they do this exercise is that it's just like a tree. Like they have all these volunteer branches in every direction. So it's like, I always say, if I walk into McDonald's and I'm all dressed up and I'm with my husband and I say, it's a special night for us. We would like your best table, please. And also I have a special request. I'm wondering if you can bring out some caviar for us to start. They are going to say, we don't do that. And they might say, you should go down the street because there's a fancy joint down there. but they're not going to feel bad and say, some of our customers would like to celebrate major milestones with us, and they're older than 5 years old. They don't feel bad because they're so clear on what they do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of organizations feel like just because we have a customer and just because they've been loyal to us, even if they don't use our products and services well, even if they don't want to go where we want to go, we owe it to them to do whatever they ask for. And that is not customer centricity.
No, and it gets confused. So let me ask you a question, because have you ever seen this where suddenly 5 people in the company have read your book, right? Or the CEO has read your book and has said, we must become a membership economy. I'm sure it happens. And now every silo is coming up with their version of what it means to be, and somebody's got to herd the cats.
Yes.
To come up. How do you do that? Tell us a little bit about the cat herding. Then we're going to get into the book, but this is at such a fundamental level. If you don't do this right, everything won't tumble the right way.
Yes. And so the first section of the book is about, like, if you're in a big company, it's like, have your small team, figure out your forever promise, make sure you have the right support from leadership, as you brought up, make sure you have the resources you need to really experiment till you get your MVP. And then you go to phase 2, which is minimum viable product. So when you go out to market,
that so quickly,
minimum viable
acronym at us very quickly. Minimum.
I know, it's terrible.
We just need to know what you're telling us.
Minimum viable product. Okay. It's the smallest product, the smallest offering that you can actually experiment with. That somebody would say,
you're going to be a lab.
Test, yes. Yeah. Okay. Right. And so you have this team in phase 1, and they're experimenting with their, these very small products that are sometimes together with chewing gum and paper clips. And they, have a live person doing, the CEO's doing customer support or whatever. And then you hit on something and you're ready to expand it. Okay. In a large company, that team is off in the corner, and now they have to change the whole culture of the whole organization. That's phase 2. Okay. How do you scale it? How do you change the metrics so that everybody's aligned?
Okay. So the first chapter section is called Getting Started.
Yeah. It's launch. Yeah.
Launch. Sorry. And
scale.
Launch is about defining it and getting clarity and not over scoping.
Yes. And experimenting until you get that first product market fit where you say, we have something here that's special.
Okay, so that's your first chapter, and you go into a lot of detail. Yes. And you're giving people tools and approaches and ways to engage.
Who they should have on the team.
Who should they have on the team? Tell us.
So in a large organization, something that I've seen is that there are more operators and fewer strategists. So both are really good. I'm not criticizing. I'm married to an operator. I'm a strategy person, but they're different, the way you look at the world.
Their brains focus and sort through things differently.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so in that first phase, you really need the strategy people. You need creative, big vision, don't need a lot of guardrails, analytical. And then in that second phase,
you don't want the yes, but initially. You want to just keep training your way through it. Okay.
Exactly. Or people
who are asking customers. Are you supposed to ask customers at this point, not what to build, but what they need? Because don't you need to know the goals?
Yes. So in that early phase, you need marketing. You need market research, somebody who knows the customer, somebody who can reach out.
And get them in front of you or whatever.
Yes. Okay. Get them in front of you, get you in front of them. You need that resource. You need analytics. You need somebody who can really, because you're going to have data and you're going to need somebody who can help you with that. You need a project lead who is strategic and has credibility with leadership team. So often that's somebody who's been around for a while and is usually like a mid-manager, like a VP kind of person, a high potential, somebody that the exec team might say, that guy 2 levels down and off over there, someday he's going to be in the executive suite.
So let's give a really good numbers storyteller.
Mm-hmm. And an ambitious person.
Ambitious. And to your point, credibility. Strategic. Right? They
Credible.
See them on the rise.
Yeah. And I've gotten to the point now where when I go to a new company and I say, who's going to be my day-to-day? I always say, whose career is going to be made by this being successful? right?
Okay.
And it's a person with that mindset who's like, this is my thing. This is my opportunity here. And if they don't have that person, I don't take the work.
Got it.
Because it's not going to be you need that leader.
Yeah. I have
in addition to the
kind of
CEO
requirements, because you need to have somebody who can take it through and has that credibility.
Exactly.
Okay. So now you're past the first section, launch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you were asking about culture and how do you get everybody aligned? And so I have chapter 8 is all about manage culture, manage emotions.
Oh, good.
And what are the metrics? And I'm going to give you a link to that for your community.
Oh, we'll put it in the show notes.
So
yeah,
perfect.
We'll put it in the show notes. Cool.
But that's really like, that's in the scaling phase is, usually people go from, straight from, we have this small thing that's working. And then when they think about scaling, they focus on the infrastructure, on technology.
Yeah.
But the culture is way more important because you can kind of, limp your way along without having the right technology for a while.
Yep.
But if the team is either pushing back or doesn't understand or doesn't trust or doesn't like or is afraid or doesn't have the skills, you're just never going to move forward.
Well, or this, I'm sure or it plays with how they've been paid in the past.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Their sales goals, how they've found their way up the ladder, or it threatens their survival or their importance in the organization, because you're going to be mixing up the apple cart here. You know what I call this?
No.
It's all about the underbelly.
Yeah, totally. The yes.
The underbelly. So I love that. And so they can find that in chapter. Is it its own separate chapter about culture?
Yes, it's a chapter. So there's
show it to us.
Yeah, hold on.
I'm so pushy. Show it.
I love it.
Okay.
Can you see?
Yeah, I see in my old eyeballs. Yep.
Yeah. So part 1 has 7 chapters about launching. So getting started.
I see. So and 7 chapters in each.
And then part 2, manage emotions, transform culture, build a shared vision, then acquisitions, then setbacks, then technology, pricing, and metrics is all in the scaling. That's all in that scaling section.
Scale. Okay. So frame for us how we figure out success in the beginning and when we know we've achieved a level of success in this area called scale.
Yeah. So the first phase, launch, is when you get to a point, if you're a startup, where you get to the point where you can ask for funds to grow.
Yep. Okay.
And it's sort of the same thing. I always think about 2 tests, learning and leverage. So before you ask for more resources or take your next step and you work in a larger organization, there are things that you can't do because you have no leverage in the organization yet, right? Like, so I remember working with one company, and this is a very big company, and we had the whole team gathered. I flew up for the day, and the CEO came in, and my host, my VP level person said, do you have some words for us? And he said, this is a $4 billion unit for us. Please don't screw it up.
Da-ding.
Right? And
I have another.
and what he was pointing out, to be fair, was that there was a lot at stake.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so to get leverage with him, we had to demonstrate that we knew with a level of confidence that this was going to work, that it was scalable, that people loved it, that we were going to generate more revenues either through lifetime customer value or through number of customers reached than we would have, going the old way. That's leverage. He won't give us what we need until we prove that.
That's right. I always call that earning the right to continue to do it, right? You have you have to keep proving it and earning it on an ongoing basis.
And so there's that, and that piece, the earning, which I call leverage, right? And then the other piece, leverage with your, that's also like, oh, we're afraid that if you do too much of this, our distribution partners are going to shut us down before we're ready to be shut down. That might be a leverage issue too, right?
Sure.
Or my colleague on the sales organization is not going to sell this new product until I can prove that his salespeople will make just as much money.
Or that he will keep making.
Or that he, of course.
He may be calling it about his salespeople because he's got his own skin in the game too. Yeah, because that is interesting because you really you have to dance with the sales organization on this.
Oh, yeah. And, I grew up in strategy and in marketing product. And, there are a lot of times where I think, oh, salespeople, they're so difficult. They're so self-centered. They don't care about the company. But I've come to realize that salespeople, if you think about the organization, marketing people are paid to look way off into the future at where we're going, what's next, what's possible. And engineers, product people are kind of in the back because they're like, I have to actually deliver on this. And I'm only 97.8% there. So let's say we're not ready, so and then in the middle, salespeople are focused on today.
Yeah.
Right.
Today. Yep.
And we need that.
As well.
You need that voice at the table. But some organizations, sales voice is too loud. And I think of that as, quarterly capitalism, where it's like, it's all about the next revenue target as opposed to the supporting metrics that are really driving long-term health.
Well, and building the long-term path, right? I just call it, like you, quarterly inclined. In fact, one of the things I ask people to do is understand the power core of your company. And a lot of times it's sales, and you need to dance with the power core to get them as partners and to earn the right to do the work. And do you ever then, Robbie, shine the spotlight back on sales as you're building it and give them a lot of credit? Because you got to dance. You got to make sure people feel like they have a seat at the table of the design. And that's all that underbelly work. Here we go.
Yeah. And you've got to, even more than making them feel like they're important, you have to recognize that they are important.
They are important. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for correcting me.
They go out every day and they are fighting the good fight to bring in the revenue.
They have to have a seat at the table of designing it and being part of the build of it as you get to that stage.
Yeah.
So what are some more tactics that people could understand from the book or from you, of course?
Yeah. So in this scaling phase, so we've talked a little bit about culture and, exposing the underbelly, understanding what the issues are that are holding you back, and also bringing along your colleagues and helping everybody recognize that we're all in this together. So, so for example, one sort of, I thought was sort of a funny example was, I was brought in to help with retention for a media company.
Okay.
And they said, well, our retention team is terrible.
And
they're not retaining.
So
subscribers, subscriber retention. So our marketing team is amazing. They're bringing in lots of new subscribers. Our product is amazing. All the subscribers want our product, but our retention team, our support team, our customer success team, they're just doing a terrible job. Everybody's leaving. So we brought in all the leadership from around the organization because shared metrics.
Yep.
And I said, let's talk about why people are leaving. So the customer success team went through their list. First thing was a lot of people left when the technology wasn't working, right? You're like, well, that's not the fault of the retention people, right? If you're streaming a soccer game and it stops in the middle, you're going to cancel. Because you're going to say, well, I can't count on them. The second problem was that the marketing team that was a product problem, by the way. Second problem was the marketing team was saying, join us because we have access to the annual soccer championship, right? So everybody joined, used the 2-week free trial to watch that soccer championship, and then they canceled. And again, that was the fault of the success team. No, that's the fault of marketing for not marketing the right benefits
and the right value. Exactly.
And it's the fault of the product team for the offer and for the onboarding process.
Got it.
So I think another tactic.
You built in defection into your offer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a piece of advice, is to really think about the metrics and make sure that the whole organization is aligned around the same metrics, and not that, for example, sales is being rewarded for how many people they bring in, whether or not those people stay.
Yep.
And that product
belly work. Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that product isn't being rewarded just for the headline benefit that gets people to sign up and buy the product, but also for the engagement benefits and the onboarding benefits that get them to stay for a long time.
And the long lifetime value, right?
Yes, which result in long lifetime value, right? But a product team, a lot of product teams are, they're compensated by feature by feature. Did this feature bring in new people, as opposed to were they part of the solution that engaged people or retained people?
That makes perfect sense. Okay. So anything else on the middle section? It is so robust. We were just skimming very high. What else should people know about that middle section?
Pricing.
Okay.
Pricing for subscription. So, people talk a lot about free trial, right? You should only have a free trial if your customers don't understand what it tastes like, or they don't believe it tastes as good as you say. And if those aren't the reasons that you're struggling, so for example, you might be struggling because the customer says it's too hard to use your product. That has nothing to do with does it taste good or what does it taste like? It's just like, for example, weight loss, right? If somebody says, Robbie, I know you want to lose 5 pounds, stop eating for 2 weeks and you'll lose the weight. I'll say, that has nothing to do with how much you're charging me. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So free trial versus freemium, which is all about changing behavior over time, incorporating new habits. Freemium is you get something for free forever, or because it's part of the product itself. So LinkedIn, many of us are members of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Very few of us actually pay for anything. But if we weren't there, the product wouldn't be valuable to the recruiters and the salespeople and the job seekers.
So that's the freemium.
Yeah.
You give something away for free to create an asset that eventually boomerangs back to you.
Yeah, exactly. You create more value for the payers.
Yeah.
And then you also, with pricing, you want to keep your pricing really simple. And there's a temptation when you're moving to subscription to be like, okay, well, we're going to have this subscription, but these guys are bigger than those guys. So let's charge these ones more. And also the onboarding process, they call us a lot. So it's expensive. That first month is more expensive for us. So let's charge them an onboarding fee.
Oh, God.
Also, we're afraid they're going to cancel. So let's charge a cancellation fee for the first 9 months, unless they buy this extra feature. And you start to, your head's going to explode.
Yep.
And that's because
like trying to understand your frequent flyer benefits.
Exactly. It's exactly right. The more complicated your system is, the less your customers are going to trust you.
That's right. That's right. And the harder it is going to be also, Robbie, to prove the value back to your leaders, right?
Yeah. Yeah. To explain what's going on.
All the ifs, ands, and buts create new spreadsheets. Each one has its own tab on your Excel spreadsheet.
I had that spreadsheet. I know that spreadsheet.
Yes, you have. Okay. So let's go to the third section. We're not done by any stretch of the imagination, but I want to make sure we have time for you to go through all 3 sections. So what's the third section?
So the third section is called Lead, and it's really for the organizations that have been doing subscription or membership for a long time and who might actually think that they're fine, except that they're losing subscribers. And so these are organizations, this is what I hear from them, this is how I recognize that they're in the lead phase. They say, we've had a great business for 50 years, 40 years, 70 years. Our members love us. Once they've stayed for 3 months, they stay forever. But the problem is, young people aren't joiners. Young people aren't newspaper readers. Young people don't go to the gym. Young people fill in the blank. And that's where our problem is. And when I hear that, what I know is that they've been using their microscope too much. They've been this is a customer centricity issue, I think.
Yeah.
Or a misunderstanding of it, where they're so focused on today's customers.
And what they've always done.
Yes, because today's customers aren't as demanding as tomorrow's. When I become a member of something, I take off my consumer hat. I stop looking for alternatives. I put on my member hat and I trust the organization. So if I join a gym, first I'm going to look at 5 gyms. I'm going to be concerned like which is the most hygienic, which one has the best equipment, which one has the best classes, all these things. Then I'm going to decide, and I'm not going to walk into another gym. So I'm going to have no idea if my gym is staying current or not.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Right. And so I'm a less critical member. Whereas if you aren't a member of a gym, you might look at my gym and think, wow, this is kind of shabby. The classes are old fashioned. I'm going to go across the street. Now, there's a small chance that you say to me, Robbie, you've been a member there for a long time. That's a terrible gym. You should come to the one across the street. It's cheaper and better. But most likely, I'm not looking for anything new. And so this happens with professional associations and newspapers and gyms, where once somebody joins, that's how they get their work done, and they don't look for alternatives. And so it's really important. If your organization is in this phase and doing an awesome job with their microscope of looking at today's customers, make sure you use your telescope to look at tomorrow's members and see what they want and expect, and also to look out on the horizon and see what new technologies are available, what new competitors are trying to solve the same problem, because they may not be coming from your industry. Like, financial services has been completely disrupted by PayPal and Venmo, which are not financial services organizations, and there's a lot of other, Airbnb versus hotels. It's coming out of left field.
Let me ask you a question, because we're recording this in the middle of this crazy COVID time, which is why we're all sitting in our houses constantly. Do companies have to reevaluate their membership features now because people's needs have changed? And how should they do that?
Yeah. So first of all, they should always be evaluating their offerings for their members. That is a key element of a subscription model, because your customers are trusting you. They're paying you every month, and they're assuming that you're going to continue to improve the product to help them achieve their goal, right? Netflix 15 years ago, same mission as today, same promise, which is professionally created video content, broadcast, a broad selection delivered with cost certainty in the most convenient way possible. But the most convenient way possible today is streaming. And 15 years ago, it was 3 DVDs out at a time. And
in those red envelopes.
In the red envelopes, which I loved.
I love those red envelopes.
They're so, and but what they're doing hasn't changed, but they're always thinking about how do we better serve our members to justify their loyalty, right? So theoretically, one of the reasons that subscription businesses are proving to be more resilient than other businesses, and we just saw this with Zuora's data that they recently released.
So during the COVID time, we're seeing that?
Yes, during COVID time.
Say more.
So Zuora is a company that does subscription billing for companies. So they have their subscription billing platform.
A lot of data. Yeah.
They see a lot of data of a broad range of industries, and they reported that Q1 of 2020 versus 2019, 89% of businesses were either flat or growing their number of members in Q1. Only 11% of all the businesses that use subscription billing through Zuora reported that their membership numbers had declined in this Q1. Wow. So much more resilient business model. And part of the reason that people jump to is inertia, right? Oh, I have a subscription. Oh, I forgot to cancel. But a lot of it is that subscription offerings are designed to be so engaging and so much a part of how people live their lives.
The fiber of your life, right?
Yeah, that you don't want to cancel it. And to answer your point in a very roundabout way, you're so good at anticipating what they're going to need next. That's in your DNA. So I think, yes, those businesses do need to be really responsive. And we saw Zoom just incorporate a whole bunch of security features.
They needed to, right?
They needed to.
It was good that
they did it.
Done it really quickly. That's right.
They jumped on it.
Is there a way to go out and ask in a membership economy or in a membership, because you've got people who are already opted in to have a relationship with you. Is there anything wonderful that you're finding that membership communities are doing to find out how their members are doing and what they need right now? Any wonderful practices you've seen?
Well, I think the wonderful thing about subscription businesses in particular is that they have so much data about usage. And they have such a habit of tracking engagement. So that's recency, frequency, depth, and breadth of usage. So not just did they sign up, but when was the last time they used it? And that data gives them so much insight about where to go next. They have that as a habit. So that's really what I'm seeing in terms of anybody doing something really.
Are they asking in a certain way? Are they holding forums? Are they having, human listening? You've got people who have already said, hey, I'm going to be your friend, right? I'm going to be your partner. I'm intrigued by the notion of the opportunity to listen within your membership community.
Yeah. So I think a lot of organizations have that built into the fabric of their model. So they have an online community where they're always, I'm more of a fan of systems, that are working,
to tell you the information, but it may or may not tell you how people are feeling or what they need, or it's going to tell you their behaviors, not necessarily their frailties or their what's impacting them. I was just curious.
Yeah. No, that's a good question.
Interesting.
Are you seeing things, or is there something that you've seen that is especially?
We're prodding people. I've been prodding people to go out and have very live human, face-to-face conversations, not from a
face-to-face like this.
Yeah.
Digital.
You don't be in a room. Because we need leaders to see the humanity, and we need people to have the corporate veneer ripped off of companies
Yeah.
to see the humanness of CEOs and leadership teams. And, in our realm, we spend, and you must too, lots of time presenting the data back. And
Yes.
often when we do it in live situations, customers will say things that's been in the data all along, but until the CEO or the leadership team hears the customer say things like,
Yeah.
I am not a crook, why do you keep charging me for this? Or you make me feel unnecessary, or this makes me feel this way. And they're like,
Yeah. Oh,
why didn't you ever tell us that before? And we're like, we've told you this 500 times. It's been in the
yeah.
report
Well,
for 20
okay.
years.
I have a good story for you.
Oh, yay. Okay.
So a grocery chain in Latin America,
Yeah.
They're also sheltering in place there.
Yes, they are.
This is like a kind of fancy chain. Most of their customers maybe a little bit older, a little bit wealthier,
Okay.
don't really like e-commerce. Even though the organization has been trying to encourage their members to move toward membership, e-commerce, all these different things. So when this happened, a couple things happened. One is their CEO and their leadership team immediately, everybody, there was huge demand for e-commerce and delivery.
Oh, right. Which they didn't have before, which people didn't even want before.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They didn't want it before, especially, you can think, I think of my mom as being my mom's not in Latin America, but she's like, I like to go to, Whole Foods every morning after
cantaloupes. Yeah.
I want to squeeze the cantaloupes,
Right.
I want to pick the piece of meat and, argue with the butcher.
Yeah.
But what happened is they had no choice. So this is a big point. Right now, people have no choice. So they have to adopt new habits. Led to a huge spike in demand. So the whole leadership team is now they're picking and packing orders, right? So they're on the shelves picking the orders. So they're starting to see why, if you've ever ordered online, which we all have, of course, in the last few months, I ordered cream cheese. They were out of the size of cream cheese that I wanted. So instead I got hummus.
I know.
Right. And you're like, whose idea was that?
Right.
And why are these bananas overripe? Why did they put those? Why did anybody think that anybody would want overripe bananas?
Okay. And who's gotten 3 hard avocados?
I have.
Right. I always put notes
frustrating.
in, I need to be able to eat these avocados within 2 days. Like you have to, but that's a lot of burden on your customer. Anyway, so now it's creating an understanding.
So, and they are leapfrogging forward on their entire digital strategy.
That's
because
what I'm talking about.
But it's the spike in engagement from the members because they're being forced to get over the friction of doing something in a new way. So it's a great moment for new things because people are more receptive. They're more willing to endure the friction.
That's right.
And then, in this company, the leadership being out on the front lines, both as a way of pitching in, but also as a way of demonstrating to customers and employees that they're listening and that they're there.
There you go.
And that is leading to an aha, which is resulting in let's invest more right now in getting this right.
That is what I'm talking about. And we are on the same page because one of the things I'm like beating my drum on is this is a moment.
We're having a moment.
We didn't ask for this moment, but we got a moment where we can accelerate connecting high tech with high touch to deliver the right stuff and understand people's lives and get our executives into an interface with customers that they haven't had before, that they care about having now, where before it was a bunch of reports and pieces of paper and they weren't personally engaging. And that will stay with them. And I'm encouraging people to manufacture as much as they can, getting their leaders into those moments.
Yeah.
So those aha plugs start happening. And those aha lights are going to change companies.
Yeah, that's so smart.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a great thing for you on these membership people is to turn these aha lights on somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. We're having a moment. We're having a moment too, trying to drive change because suddenly people are like, we have to do something. We have to do things differently and better.
How do you get people past, and I know we're getting over our time a little. I have a last question for you. How do you get people past the fear of just doing what we need to do to stay in business and recognize that this is an opportunity to really be a forever company, be what I call unforgettable?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. So what I tell middle managers is if your CEO hasn't gotten over that hurdle,
Yeah.
you might want to go somewhere else if you can, because you're not going to change their mind. It's very hard to change the mind way above you. But for me, when I'm being brought in and helping them, there's a couple things. One of them is to help them understand that not doing anything is a choice.
Yeah.
And what choice is likely to lead them. And helping them to understand that a lot of the things that to them feel like big leaps forward of new stuff are actually, from a consumer perspective, the new normal.
Yep.
So helping them to see in the context that, this approach is not so novel. And then the last thing is, getting really granular with them about what they're afraid of. Like just getting them to spit it all out, because then you can break it up and say, okay, you're worried about cannibalization. Let's deal with that. You're worried about your relationship with your distributors. Let's figure that out. You're worried about, your salespeople leaving before you're ready to move to the new pricing structure. Let's figure that out.
That's right. That's right. Robbie, before we go, and thank you, I think you've given people a nice path here, and we're gonna tell them where to get the book and encourage all of that, definitely. But I've got one last question for you. I always ask this at the end of my podcast. I call it the pay it forward question for folks who are just starting on the path or want to get a little bit of that time cut off their learning curve. So, Robbie, you ready?
Yeah.
What do you know now that you wish you knew then?
I think the number one thing that I know now that I wish I'd known then was that if you don't have leadership that believes in you, it's going to be very, very hard to change them. If they think you're a B+ player, not an A player, leave as soon as you're able and find, there is not, here's maybe a more elegant way of saying what I've learned, which is that talent is an inefficient market. You can be really, really talented and underappreciated at one place and go somewhere else and have your value go way up. And I mean value in terms of what you're being paid, but more importantly, how you're treated,
your perception.
how people, perception. So I wish that I had known that earlier and I would have left some roles a lot faster.
Yeah.
And it's helped me now with consulting. If somebody's not really into what I'm doing and they kind of have a, arms folded, prove it. At this point in my life, I don't go there.
Pick up your marbles, baby. That's what I always tell people. You got to pick up your marbles. Tell us, hold that book up again, because some people are going to be listening in and we're going to take a picture of this. Let's see your beautiful face with the book. There you go. There you go. The Forever Transaction. Where can people get the book, Robbie?
You can get the book anywhere books are sold. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get it at your local bookseller. Indie Books will tell you where your local bookseller is. Support our local bookstores right now.
And I would imagine your website has lots of great content on it as well. You're a giver.
Yes.
How do people
Robbie Kellman Baxter. RobbieKellmanBaxter.com.
KELLMAN. We'll put that in the show notes as well. You have a lot of names.
Yeah. If you type in Robbie Baxter, subscription, membership economy, you'll find me. I'm very easy to find. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure. And thanks everybody for continuing to listen and watch. Remember, please go to customerbliss.com/podcast and sign up so you can get Robbie right into your inbox and let us know how we're doing. We are working really hard to make sure we're adding really good value for you and helping you have a slice of happiness and joy as we're all pushing that rock up.
Little optimism.
That's exactly right. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.